Hey, it's a new world, gotta adapt to it. Innovation, information, more than the average. Rushing, please ignore the interruptions. Cause this is digital discussions.
What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Digital Discussions. Today, we have very exciting news. Doug, I'm super excited, man. It's been a long time coming, and you're officially part of the Sabre family, man. Welcome aboard.
Yeah, thank you. Super excited to be part of the family, and yeah, it's been a fun day making the announcement, and looking forward to everything that's to come.
For sure, yeah. So for the viewers out there watching this, Doug and I know each other about 20 years, as long as I'm in commercial real estate, and we met early on through the Starbucks account, which
hmm
a lot of the meaningful relationships in my career started through Starbucks. So we've been working together in many different capacities over the years, and more recently, we've been competitors, friendly competitors in the national advisory consulting space. So it's great to finally join forces and be working on the same side of the table. So excited about that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And yeah, it's yep, not often you get the opportunity to join forces with somebody that, as you said, friendly competitors, and the the opportunities to take everybody's best practices and best talents and come together, it obviously it makes it pretty enticing.
Yeah, for sure. So, a lot's been going on, obviously, in this post COVID world. A lot of the folks that I speak to talk about how, it's almost as if you're in the first round boxing with a young Mike Tyson. He's trying to rip your head off. Would you agree with that analogy at all? Do you think we're still entering the woods from that perspective, or would you say we're a little further?
Yeah.
What's your
Yeah, I mean, I've been a little unpopular from time to time in the last 3 months because I've not been in the camp that, said, yeah, V-shaped rebound, we'll be back to normal in June or maybe July. And it just never made sense to me. If you understand even just sort of the basic sort of kind of medical timelines around the virus cycles, like there was just no way that was going to happen. Unfortunately, it's actually turning out a little bit worse than I thought. I was sort of in the middle camp of, like end of the summer, we should be getting there.
Yep.
Clearly, for a lot of people now, that's not happening. And in fact, by the end of the summer, I think in some markets, it's going to be the worst that it's ever been, unfortunately.
Right.
So, what does that mean? All this stuff, just as the timelines are going to get pulled way out. And I've changed my personal thinking on it that the sort of the entry phase is probably 6 months long. Like we're maybe halfway through, like, you know, getting to the starting line to get back towards something. And then that next phase is like 18 months to 24 months of a lot of ups and downs, and a lot of that, the dominoes of different, some tenants fail, and what does that do to the shopping center, and then what does that do to the loans, and all those things in that value chain or food chain, that are all interconnected, and that doesn't happen all at once. And so it's just going to take time. And that being said, throughout all of that, and I think we've got plenty of our own evidence, there are opportunities, there are things that you can do, you can have success, but you have to think different, look at things differently, and maybe measure success differently, as well. And I think that part of, maybe for a lot of people, and I think I include myself in that, what success means has changed also. And I think it gets to a more holistic view of that, and kind of a more personal view of that, not just how much money did I make or how many deals did I close.
Yeah, for sure. You said a lot there that we can unpack a little bit. First off, everything that you just said is so aligned with the way that I think, which makes so much sense that we're we're doing this together now. So, I agree with everything that you said. And I think that, I always looked at downturns as a major opportunity in business. And, I think for the people who have been through downturns and are still at their desk or still hitting the road and canvassing and, not necessarily just putting their feet up and watching, binge watching Netflix, that they'll come out of this further ahead, right? Because anytime that there is any sort of a downturn, it's definitely a natural cleansing process of any industry. And especially in our industry, when you have a lot of folks who, I like to say that our industry is one of the most uninnovative industries that I think are out there. And, it's amazing to me that so few of the people in the commercial real estate space really rely heavily on, digital media and social media. And, clearly that also is something that attracted you to Sabre. So, for us, I think that it just really pushes us that much further ahead because we've been spending so much time investing in technology and using these different types of platforms before you actually needed to. Now, a lot of the other folks who never really understood the benefit of doing that stuff are starting to do it, and they just need to start figuring it out now. So they're kind of behind the curve a little bit. So from a business perspective, and the fact that you focus on the entire country, what are you looking for? What type of business do you focus on? Maybe you could tell us a little bit about what you do as a consultant, as an advisor, because it's different from what the general population of commercial real estate brokers do.
Yeah, for sure. So, the best way to sort of stand out or to really have something to differentiate is to have a way to add value, and finding how you can add your value. And it's not going to be the same for everybody. And I found personally, the more you're likely to be able to add value better if you like that, where you're adding the value. So if something you're passionate about, even within the space that you're working in, it doesn't have to be, that it's your hobby that you're bringing into it, or, some other avocation, but it needs to be something that, it really gets you going. And so for me, what I really love at this point in my career is, that strategic thinking and thought partnership, and working with, with the clients and the retailers. And this tends to be smaller retailers, and helping them, through their thought process of, taking their business and their idea, and how do you bring that to retail? What does it look like? So they may have one location that came about in a variety of different ways, but was not necessarily all intentional the way it was planned, or maybe it was very intentional, but the results they got were not what they had planned. And so how do you take a very limited amount of information and now figure out an expansion strategy, a market strategy, even what should the next location look like, how big, what types of locations, who's our customer, and how do we express what we do in the physical world. So for me, that's what I do. Like, that's where I add a lot of value, is helping retailers and companies through that thought process, and then doing the rest of it, building out that expansion plan, and executing and doing that with with a team of people, and helping them get open, and packaging that all into a complete basket of services, and which we do as these outsourced real estate services or advisory services. And we do that, on a national basis. We use a hand-selected network of local brokers. So another advantage we have is that, we're not one of the larger firms that, does have an office everywhere. That can be good, but it can be bad if you are going to use every office. They're not all created equal. Brokers aren't all created equal. And I think the best service to our clients is to be able to pick the best broker. It doesn't matter who they're with.
Yeah, for sure. And I think I think the bigger shops that do have those offices located everywhere across the U.S., for the most part, they're pretty much typically office, brokerage companies that also have a retail component to them.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. And that's always been one of the major points of differentiation for Sabre. And part of our success on the national advisory front is the fact that we actually work with some of the best CBRE, some of the best Cushman, some of the best Newmark, brokers, and the list goes on across the country. And I think that's a major advantage that a client of Sabre gets, including the boutique feel and being on trend and really understanding trends and consumer behavior and so on and so forth. And we're not married to having to work with one specific broker or one specific brokerage company in any market. And we're always going to line up the absolute best possible company and person for that specific requirement. We also don't just use the same broker in Nashville, Tennessee, per se, for any requirement, right? And
Yeah, I mean that's a further differentiator. That was actually something I learned about Sabre, as we were exploring this, was that not only do you pick the best person in the market, but you've actually gone to that next level, and you're picking the best person for the requirement in the market. And so you may have a relationship with two or three different brokers, all of whom are excellent, but have different specialties. Nashville's a great example. In town versus the suburbs. Nashville is a lot of suburb, and that is it's very different than in town, and it's not like Chicago where it's sort of bleeds from core to city to dense suburb to suburbs. It's downtown and the suburbs, and so those breed very different types of brokers.
Yeah, and then there's also, as far as servicing a company, right? Dollar General's needs are going to be very different than Yoga or Solid Core or all of these other boutique fitness concepts that we represent. So I think that's a very important distinction, and it's important to be. It's basically customized solutions for a particular client. And I think, that's really a major differentiator when you're able to provide that and you're operating in the best interest of the client at all times. And you and I always talk about that. You can't lose, right? As opposed to, again, not to talk negatively about the traditional, commercial real estate brokerage companies that have existed since the beginning of time and have not changed or evolved over the years. It's a lot of brokers give other brokers a bad name. So far, to the extent that I hate being referred to as a broker, I actually look at it as it's a curse word. Like, don't call me a broker. I'm not
Totally.
I'm not fee driven. I'm not going to do a deal just to earn the fee. I'm going to kill the deal every single time if it's not what I truly believe in is in the best interest of the client. And I'm always thinking about lifetime value. You're the same exact way. And you know what? Those are the people that are going to be able to survive and thrive through this COVID downturn.
Yeah, it's fun. And we used to say, we have to be a broker to do what we do, but that's where it stops. We have to be licensed, but beyond that, that's not what we are. So yeah, totally agree. And it's what you say is what you do, and so having that outlook and that view of yourself then influences how you present yourself, and and what what people will see in you when when you're presenting to them.
So, question for you: in 20 years ago, when you and I first met, just shy of 20 years ago,
Yeah.
how would you say the retail real estate world was different than it is now? Like, what are what things would you highlight that were different then than they are now?
Yeah, the biggest one is just the technology that's used, as behind the curve as we still are as an industry. Back when, in the time period we're talking about in the late 90s, let's say, it's paper maps and rub on dots, for the most part, and aerials are something that somebody flies in an airplane that you pay, $300 to do, which, inflation adjusted would be like paying I don't know, $800, a grand now to get it done. And you rarely did them. The big guys did them when you were doing a, major, 100,000 foot tenant. You'd fly some stuff, or if you own the property, but you would never fly stuff for a Starbucks tour. I mean, would be insane.
Okay.
And that was, that's where, so I've always been based not in a major market. I've always been in Western New York, has been HQ forever. And so when you're sitting there and, wanting to compete for business on, on a national level or even on multi-market level, like, all right, what am I going to do to differentiate? And so I love technology. I always have. And I've always, in my own life, it's just always a thing. I always have the newest phone, all that. And so uh, I took that as my way to have an advantage. And so starting about that time, we were creating digital maps. We would take a paper map and scan it, the whole thing.
Yeah,
And
you do that also, man. I remember.
yeah, mark it up digitally and then print it back out again.
Yeah,
you
crazy.
know,
Right? It's
we used
crazy to think about.
we used to piece digital files together of aerials. So Kodak is from Rochester, right? So they had this satellite photography department that nobody knew about. We only knew because we lived here. You could order digital images of most places around the country. You would get this drive full of these images, but you had to piece them together. And it was like this mathematical thing you had. So we literally would piece these, but they were great. They were compared to flying stuff. So we did all this Walmart work. And one of the things that helped us get that account was that we were able to provide, all of these aerials at a time when that wasn't common. Uh, and that's changed now. You pull it up anywhere, nobody thinks twice about it, but it was a big deal. So things like that. And, that's, more people have more technology now, but still we really don't leverage it the way other industries do. I mean, I know, we, meaning you and I, are always trying to find ways to leverage it, but even the tools that are available are pretty limited that we can even go out and use. There's not that many purpose-built tools that fit what we do. And so I've always found that it takes a lot of work to get things to work for you the way you need to, so that they're actually better than whatever it's replacing.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, and when I think about it, I asked the question, I didn't prepare to ask the question. It
Mhm.
just came to me as we're talking. And, another thing that I think is very different today is, and especially now, post COVID, is back when, one specific, you had an assignment with one retailer.
Mhm.
I feel like almost there were so many more tenants that were actively pursuing real estate
Absolutely.
in a specific small geography, and you could do a number of different locations with each one of those tenants annually.
Mhm.
And I think that what's so interesting, obviously this is putting a spotlight on the retail world, right? The coronavirus and all the bankruptcies and everything else that COVID has accelerated. So it's funny because when people that are not in our industry talk to me about the death of retail, basically, right, which is all over the media. This company's now filing, and a Senna Group, and
Every day, new
every
one every day.
and but if you're in our industry, the companies that you hear are filing, you and I have been hearing about, being in trouble for
Right.
many years at this point.
Right.
And it's also, it's been when, not if, they go away. And I think that's uh for me, and I'm speaking obviously for myself, I was about to speak for you also, but it's less concerning to me because we're still in the phase that the weak retailers that were not innovating, that are probably past their expiration date, are going away. And it's not surprising to me.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go even further. So, yeah, I'll speak for myself and say that um, not only is it not surprising, it's welcome.
Right.
I actually had this, I said this with somebody the other day. There's really two things. One, this is really a forest fire, right? Instead of dying for lack of nutrition, it's just a forest fire. It's fast and and violent, and everything's just going to get burned down by it. But that's okay. We were going there anyway. There's nothing. I've yet to find anything I can point to that's happening in retail that wasn't already happening, either more slowly or less visibly. But everything that is happening, the positive and the negative changes, were all coming. The good news is we don't have to sit around and agonize through them for 10 years. They're just going to come flying at us over the next 2 years, and then we'll be basically done. And
Yeah.
the good news for you and I is now we get to do the great stuff of reinventing retail and participate in the fun part of what comes next, instead of spending the next 10 years of our careers hacking off all the dead wood, because it's just going to get burned right off. So it's actually really exciting. I say that with total understanding that that also comes with a lot of pain. It's not a casual thing. A lot of people will suffer through a lot of things as a result of it. There's nothing I can do about that. It's happening. I'm aware of it. I'm very empathetic towards it. I'm part of it. Um, but it is happening, and so we can either you know do nothing or do something positive out of it. And I think we're aligned that we want to do something positive and find and help retailers find and landlords and everybody involved what the new what retail should look like going forward, or can look like. What are the opportunities? How do we think about things differently? If the slate really is largely getting wiped clean, you can do a lot of stuff. I mean, just look at all the things that retailers have done in the last 3 months that would have taken them 5 years to do.
Yeah.
But they didn't have a choice, so they figured out a way to get it done. Like, how great is that? Like,
I listen, man, it's funny because, again, pain aside, and we're going through it,
yeah,
obviously
we all are.
we're a big part of it, right? It's painful to get up and grind your day, in and out, and not know if and when you're going to get paid, right? And that's always a frustrating part of what we do for a living, and it's
Yeah,
even tougher now. And we have mouths to feed, right?
right.
So it's not, we're definitely in the thick of it. And I feel for anybody else who is. I'm never
Hmm.
rooting for the demise of anyone else, but
No.
the unfortunate reality is that in our industry, on the brokerage advisory side, you get out what you put in, right? So you have to be very self-motivated. You have to
Hmm.
work really hard and do great work, whether or not you're getting paid for it. Basically, that's always been
Right.
part of our job. And it'll get a little bit tougher. And at the same time, to to piggyback onto what you said, it is very exciting though. I mean, there's going to be so much innovation. There's going to be so many new different concepts that we can't even imagine right now, that super smart people in quarantine are
Yeah.
executing as we speak. And it's going to be so exciting to not only see what happens, but be involved in that. Like,
Yeah.
that's where you and I thrive, like
Hmm.
working hand in hand and alongside of the CEO and the founder of this amazing new cool concept is where you and I thrive. So that's
Totally.
awesome.
I really see it as our responsibility, as being very experienced in the business, and really understanding it, on that 10,000 hour level, right? And helping to not only
Nice
not
out,
only
nice outliers reference there, by the way.
but I've really, over the last 3 months, really internalized that something we can do is really show leadership around um, learning as much as we can. I've spent a lot of time personally learning about a lot of parts that are around the retail real estate circle, that plug into it, and learning what's happening with them. So what's happening with contactless payments and fulfillment and store design and all of these things, because and I see us as sitting pretty much in the middle of a lot of that, and having a big influence on how a lot of that happens, or how you know how you bring that to life in retail. It's not all up to us, so to speak, but um, being able to help educate our clients, or bring to our clients other resources so that they can fit all these pieces together in new and inventive ways. There's nothing that says that we have to do that, but I see that as the opportunity. So if somebody can come to us and they're just kind of figuring out what they want to do, and we can go, well, we need to bring this person in, to help with this piece, and that person with this piece, so that we can put this whole puzzle together, rather than going, all right, let us know when you figure that out, we'll be here, and we'll tell you what you need to do. Like,
Yeah.
let's be the catalyst for that, and know the players, and know what the opportunities are. Like, I'm super excited about fulfillment. I think it's an easy one, like low hanging fruit, right? So I think that we're going to be seeing, like, everybody will be doing some form or another micro fulfillment on site. So whether that's within the retail four walls, within the property, the shopping center, or within the market. But I think that anybody that's not just delivering services we'll be doing micro fulfillment, and I see, yes, new types of deals that are going to come around. Like, I need 1,500 feet of retail, but I need 2,000 feet of fulfillment space. So now the landlord needs to have a different economic model to, because I'm not going to pay the same for the fulfillment space as I will for the front of house. What if I have fulfillment space that needs to flex? So now I need a store design that's going to allow me to have 25% front of house this time of year, and 75% of front of house this time of year. I've seen some landlords that have already taken the steps to build and lease on the property dedicated fulfillment space. So it's built out as fulfillment space, 24/7 access, the whole thing. And it's only for their tenants to lease, and they can lease it to them at a better rate. So the tenant takes a smaller space, they lease some fulfillment space on site. That's another model. Then you can get into some models where you've got the malls and vacant anchor boxes. Now maybe that's a fulfillment space for anybody. You're within that market area. Here's fulfillment space. You can lease some of it. It's built out, ready to go. We're going to eat a lot of dark space with fulfillment. I think that this pandemic has shown us we need it, and the space is going to be there to do it. It's just couldn't make more sense. I really like that area. I see a lot of sort of obvious change early in that space.
So speaking about fulfillment, Amazon, good or bad for retail real estate?
Good, to the extent that nothing is good when somebody controls too much of anything. But if you really think about it, we have our problem is we have too much retail space, right? So probably not an issue. I think it's good because it's pushing everybody else to get better. Like,
Yeah.
look how much better Walmart has gotten because of Amazon. As just communicating with somebody earlier today, and it's sort of one of my favorite things to talk about. Like, if you were around in 2002, for Walmart was like a swear word. I mean, you know, from a public relations standpoint, one of the least admired companies in the country.
Yeah.
They have completely turned that around to being a social leader and being one of the more admired companies. And particularly, under Doug McMillon, has done an amazing job raising, the the profile of the company, and just getting the company to do better. I find it truly impressive with what he's done with the company.
Yeah, we were involved with Walmart back in those days,
Mm-hmm.
and obviously, Ken Breslin's family has built. Actually, I think the majority of the WalMarts in Long Island are backyard, and
Yeah.
not an easy task, from a zoning approval.
Yeah, I went to meetings that we had police protection,
Wow.
like like crazy stuff. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, it was not a well liked company.
No, not at all. I mean, it's just so interesting how, like, how things are always changing. Something that's so, like, sensitive and taboo becomes the norm at some point.
Right.
Which is super interesting. So, curious let's talk a little bit about the dilemma right now with rent abatement, rent deferral, rent relief, whatever you want to call it, right? So I always refer to it as the trickle up, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you have these tenants right now that are, months right now, 3, 4, 5 months without being open for business. And, the majority of the landlords out there are telling them that they're willing to defer rent for X number of days. Now, the overall issue with that concept is, the pro forma that tenant used to sign their lease in that space is basically, should be ripped up and thrown out the window, because
Right.
majority of those tenants, if and when they're able to open, have to open at a reduced capacity. So they can't even pay the rent they agreed to pay in their lease.
Right.
Now you tack on an additional 3, 4, 5 months of deferred rent that the landlords typically want to catch up in a 12, 18-month period, right, on top of the base rent that they're already expected to pay. The retailer can't pay it. The retailer, the restaurant, the gym, the whatever it is, right, can't afford to pay it. What happens now?
Yeah, so that's kind of that's more of the detail around what we alluded to earlier of that chain, connected chain of economics, right? So the tenant pays the landlord pays the bank, the bank pays whoever. That tenant has a problem. Everybody has a problem. The difference is, like, the saying goes, if you're the bank $1,000, it's your problem. You owe them $1 million, it's theirs. Not all tenants are created equal in this, and the smaller ones have a harder time because they're not going to take down that landlord on that next step above. But when you start to think about like the implications of that, because I really believe, I mean, there are many, more than 50% of the concept types out there that pro forma is torn up, like probably forever. Well, yeah, definitely forever. And and you have to figure out this new one, but there's absolute guarantee that it's going to involve less rent, right?
Right.
So many tenants just won't be able to pay the same rent ever again. Like, and some of that was coming anyway, right? Like, so you've talked about, and you've had past episodes and you've referred back to them where, no, you didn't predict, the pandemic, but you certainly saw, and I think, I had the same feeling, like this constant increase in everything. Like, we've been around long enough. It's not going to go on forever. Something's coming.
Yeah.
This isn't what we expected. It's way bigger than we ever expected, right? But still, this correction of things was coming, and so there was going to be some of that, because you go to these markets and you just look at, you do some simple math and you look at the rents and you just look at the number of seats and people and what people make as an income. There's just not enough money to go around at the end of the day to support this many tenants at this kind of rent. It's just not. And
No.
now it's much worse.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
so now you're starting over, and I feel for the landlord too, because they've got a mortgage, they had a pro forma they built this property on, or they bought this property on, and now that pro forma is out the window.
Listen, I feel terrible for the landlords. The at least the far majority of the landlords.
Yeah.
I feel really bad for them because, by the way, I mean, does this just mean that everybody's property just reduced value in a major way overnight, essentially?
A lot of them, yeah.
Right.
What we have to hope for is uh, that that there is enough time granted to all, that we're able to manage through these things, so that things don't, there's not a collapse of some kind or another. So that's really the goal right now, right? Is that everybody gets enough help from wherever, that we work through these things without sort of catastrophic levels of fallout. That's really the hope. Everybody's going to have pain of one kind or another, or most everybody, and we just have to understand that. And now how can we get through this with everybody kind of having some pain, rather than really devastating things happening to people.
Yeah.
That's kind of the challenge in
I,
front
I
of us.
and I think obviously this is different from market to market, urban, suburban. Clearly, the suburban markets are benefiting right now from the mass exodus
Mhm.
of New York City and, other major metropolitan areas. A lot of people that live in New York City have already left indefinitely, and a lot of the people
Mhm.
who have not left are planning to in the next year or two. And that'll be interesting. Listen, I will always bet long term on New York City.
Yeah.
It's resilient and it's a very special place. And obviously there's going to be a lot of change that goes on and a lot of touchless things, and things will be implemented that people can live in the city in a safe way. But it's going to take a lot of time. I don't
Yeah.
think New York City is back to where it was in February for maybe 4 years. I think it's a very very it's going to be a long road ahead. And the funny part about that is the landlords that we're talking to on behalf of our clients are not even discounting the rent yet. It's like
Yeah. Yeah.
they're
And I get it. I mean, because they know something's coming, but there's no empirical data to do something smart with. So nobody wants to be the first one unless you have to be. So they're all just sort of like biding their time until somebody else does something and they can start to set a new market, right? Uh, you know, you had maybe put it in the notes in the video, but you hosted that for me to date was the best discussion, I'll call it, about who takes the pain on rent deferrals and rent changes, between Anna Solid Core, Chris at DLC. It was an amazing discussion. It was a little uncomfortable at times, but it was very real and real. Both there was nobody came out of that right or wrong. Like you felt like they're both right. So what do you do? It was a really good discussion, and it really, it got very real and talked about like, you seeing two people on the opposite sides of the table talking real truth about the real stuff that's going on. So I encourage people to check that out because, they got into the real stuff that people are thinking but don't usually say.
Yeah, for sure. No, that I listen, I was while that was happening, I was, just like, wow, this is man, and it was
It's
right at the
great.
beginning of all this, and
Yeah.
it was a very good unfiltered discussion. And listen, in our role as advisor, we're having those discussions all day, every day, but a lot of people don't get a chance to have a window to it. So
Yeah.
I agree. I think people should check that out. So while we enter maybe the last chapter of our discussion here
Hmm.
and highlight and celebrate the fact that you are now at Sabre, and I don't
Yeah.
think I did enough justice to how excited I am to work with you at the beginning of this. So let me just ask you, uh, what exactly was it that made you ultimately choose us?
Yeah. I think that, as I sat, here, up in Western New York and Rochester, New York, seeing what was happening over March and into April, uh, I think the biggest thing was getting the understanding that to succeed and really thrive on the other side, um, requires really understanding sort of where you're at, what you have, what you don't have, and uh, if you think you need some pieces to really thrive on the other side, you need to go find where those are. And that was kind of that's where that process started for me, was really for the first time in my career, saying, I think that there's a better path, with finding some allies to forge through the next few years with. And then the other part of that was when sort of the idea to talk with you came, that there's not a lot of places that I see out there that are, doing stuff that's, let's call it interesting, and that standing out and differentiating. And so, yeah, I looked at the Sabre and you and what you're doing. I said, yeah, Jayson does stuff that makes me just uncomfortable enough that it's probably the right thing to be doing, and meaning, if you're not pushing that envelope a little bit, if you're not a bit uncomfortable kind of all the time, then you're really underperforming. You're really not, living your best. You're not doing your best. You need to be a little uncomfortable, and I saw that here. And even just doing what we're doing right now is, not something I would, have done on my own. But I recognize the importance of it and the value of it, and in doing it, very much enjoy it. But it's, in that basket of, like, it's like getting up and working out hard every day. Like, you're uncomfortable. Like, if you really want to make forward progress, you got to be comfortable being uncomfortable.
Absolutely. I take it a step further and I say seek discomfort,
Yeah.
and it really, that's how you can challenge yourself to grow. And I've really done so much of that over the last, call it 3.5 years, really.
Mhm.
When I started the vlog, um December 2016, and launched it basically at the beginning of 2017, I think the first week of 2017. And, just the fact that I can go back now and just watch that I have literally a video from every week documented since that time.
It's amazing.
It's crazy. And it's just caused me to grow and get uncomfortable being uncomfortable,
Yeah.
comfortable being uncomfortable, which is such a, it's easy to say, but until you do things like this and put yourself in that position, you don't really know what it means. But the things that you do that are extremely uncomfortable initially, they pretty quickly become totally comfortable and second nature. And that's where the magic lies. That's really where the
Right.
magic.
Well, yeah, I mean, it really is the same as any exercise or workout. That if you're not just treading water, but you're really trying to move forward, like, it is absolutely, you can't undo that from it. If you won't progress, if you're not pushing to where you're uncomfortable, that literally is how you progress, right? So why would this be any different? You have to be in that uncomfortable spot to progress, and then you got to do the next thing because you're going to quickly acclimate to, where you've gotten to.
Yeah, for sure. So listen, in closing, since we know that this is going to live on in the universe
Yeah.
forever,
Which makes me a little uncomfortable, by the way.
yeah, and it should, right? And but the beauty is that you and I will be able to look back at this at any time, at the genesis of us working together at Sabre, and look
Yeah.
back on it and have that fond memory. And in closing, I do want to tell you that, this is a major achievement and high point for me in my career, because I always admired what you do, how intelligent you are, the way that you approach our business, and the fact that you chose to come work with us, means the world to me. And I know we're going to do some amazing things together. So I could not be more excited. Today's a great day, Doug.
Well, thank you. Yeah, very kind words. Yeah, I feel the same way. And yeah, it's been great to having been able to meet you, really at the beginning of your career, and to see what you've done since then is very impressive. And you've built a really great company, and and also have taken a real leadership position, in the business, and set out to, really change it beyond just Sabre, and show people, a different way of being, is very impressive. There's a lot of skills there that, that I see, things that, I would like to be able to do better. So I'm always attracted to, to those situations of, where, things that I'm not good at. And so, yeah, it makes it a really great place to be coming to, and to be working with people that I respect, and think quite a lot of, and that also I have a lot to learn from.
Amazing. Great stuff. Guys, do us a favor and check out Doug, his Instagram, his LinkedIn, and obviously our website are up on
New website.
New website. That's a good point. Yes. So
Yeah.
please go check out our new website at www.sabre.life. And I think it does a very good job of representing who we are, what we do, and how we differentiate from a lot of other companies out there. And I will tell you that Doug and I together can add a lot of value to your company. And, you know, where we look under the hood really at everything and try to figure out exactly how we can help duplicate the wins, limit the failures. And really right now, that's about portfolio optimization, you know, any way that we can figure out, you know, how to streamline and take advantage of honestly what's going on in the marketplace, right? You know, Doug, I always talk about flight to quality and, you know, getting into markets that are high barrier to entry markets for tenants. You know, now's the time to really start having those discussions. And yeah, guys, we appreciate your time, and we're here. Reach out to us. We'd love to speak with you.
Thanks everybody for watching. Yeah, thank you.
Good stuff. What a great week. Let's go.
You too. All right.
Take care, Doug.
'Cause this is digital discussions.